Hi everyone, welcome to another one of our Meta Center sessions on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. It's really great to have you here and join us, and really glad you're again taking this time for your own practice and to share this time with all of us here with the Sangha, and thank you for being part of the community and also for contributing your spirit and metta here with us. So today we have Ayya Adhimutti speaking to us about Yoniso Manasikara, the importance of wise attention. So, Venerable Adhimutti ordained as a Meiji in Thailand in 2005, a Samaneri at Santee Forest Monastery in 2008, and a Bhikkhuni at Aranya Bodhi Hermitage in California in 2010 with Ayya Tataloka as a Pawantini. She currently lives as the founding and resident monastic at Dhamma Talk in New Zealand. So to learn more about Dhamma Talk and to support it, please visit www.bhikkhuni-sangha.org.nz, and I'll send the link in our chat later on as well. As always, this will be an interactive session. So we'll start with a short meditation, and then Ayya will start with an introduction to the topic, and Tina will jump in to facilitate a conversation between us. If you have any questions or any comments, please feel free to pop them in the chat or unmute yourself. But if you don't feel comfortable to share it with everyone, you could also send those questions anonymously to Tina. This session will be recorded and uploaded on YouTube, but when Tina calls out your name, she will not mention your name, so it will be anonymous. Anyway, without further ado, over to you, Ayya.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so if you all start by finding a comfortable meditation posture. So looking for a posture that allows your body to be very deeply relaxed and also your mind to be alert. So keeping your spine straight and your body and your muscles very, very relaxed. And this helps us find that kind of combination of qualities that we're aiming for in meditation, which is a very, very deep and peaceful tranquility, but at the same time, clarity and sharpness of mind. And so just take some nice deep breaths and just notice the feeling of your body in your chair. And just scan through your body and just notice any parts that might feel a little bit painful or stiff or congested. And just scan through your mind for any places of agitation or perhaps fogginess or dullness. And as you move through your body and notice one of these places, then just settle on it. And just go ahead and begin to focus on it while you breathe deeply. And as you notice this part in your body or in your mind, just help it kind of notice that it's held in this larger awareness. And if you can, just see if you can extend a kind of loving energy towards it. So you can send a kind of loving energy or maybe some comforting words. Or you can breathe into that place in your body or your mind. Just using your lungs a little bit like a bellows. You can try all of these ways with that place, just to connect with it, and also just to help it connect with you and help it to feel held in a larger space. And as you scan through your body and your mind, and as you bring this kind of loving energy to these parts of kind of stiffness or pain or congestion, these parts that don't feel quite right, with some of them, you'll notice a kind of immediate relaxing, a shift in that place in your body or your mind. And other parts won't shift. And that's okay. It just means they might need a little more attention from you later. So if a part doesn't shift, then just move on to another. Just staying with it gently. And when a part does relax, you'll notice a little more space in your body or your mind, a little more openness. And as you sense that spaciousness, it's possible to focus on that and just notice what it's like. Just focusing on that space inside. And you'll notice it becomes a kind of virtuous cycle where the more space you feel inside yourself and the more loving energy you're able to extend to these different parts of your body and your mind, the more your body and your mind relaxes and trusts you. And then the more space you feel, and the more they relax. And as your parts relax, you'll notice that you feel a little more in your body, a little more embodied, because it's often the tensions in our body and in our mind that keep us a little bit out of our body. So as your body and your mind relax, you can just notice what it's like to be in your body more. And this becomes a kind of a cycle also, where the more embodied you feel, the more kind of awareness you bring to the different parts of your body and your mind. The more your body and your mind relax, then the more you come into your body. And this can also be a state that you train yourself over time to be increasingly familiar with. How it feels to be relaxed and settled in your body. And when you notice that you're somehow a little bit out of it, then you can just bring your attention gently to these places of tension or pain or congestion, and just bring a kind of gentle awareness to them and just help them relax. And so you can do this in a gentle way in your life, because the tensions are kind of created basically by defilements. And if we just meet them with space and kind of a loving curiosity, then often they relax and allow us to be in our body. And so our body is a reflection and it's very connected with the state of our mind. And so by staying with our body and being familiar with how it is to be in a spacious, relaxed, open place, we can start to be more and more sensitive to when these different tensions come and just learn to relax them. So I'll sit quietly now for a few minutes and just let you feel how it is to be in a body that feels spacious. And if you notice there's any parts of tension or any thinking in the mind, just bring this kind of loving awareness to those parts and let them relax, and notice how your body feels once they relax. Okay, so I think I heard the bell. So I'll start my reflection. So 1 minute, I have a little bit of a cold somehow. All right, so this evening, the reflection will be on Yoniso Manasikara, which can be translated as appropriate or wise attention. And so any expertise we have or any type of knowledge we have from anything comes from attention. We're always paying attention to something. So right now, you're maybe listening to me, or you can look outside and see some birds, or you can speak with someone, or you can look at a book. Every moment of consciousness is a moment combined with an aspect of attention. And attention is crucial in the formation of experience. And so the Pali word for attention is manasikara, which means manasi plus karoti, which means to do or to make something in the mind. So attention is different from sati, and it's different from just being mindfulness. Manasikara is when you're directing your mind in a specific way. The word yoniso is connected with the word yoni or womb, and the way we are paying attention to something is going to be the birth of something else. So we need to see that we are what we are giving birth to with our attention is what we are paying attention to going to increase our love, our compassion, our clarity, and our wisdom. And how we use our attention has huge implications for our lives, as the more we think certain thoughts or feel certain emotions or experience certain states of consciousness, the more the circuits that support these experiences get carved into our brains, which makes it very easy to experience what we've experienced before. So what we apply our attention to, and even the thoughts that we think, develop inclinations in our mind. So a quote from Majjhima Nikaya 19. Bhikkhus, whatever a bhikkhu frequently thinks and ponders upon, that will become the inclination of his mind. If he frequently thinks and ponders upon thoughts of renunciation, he has abandoned the thought of sensual desire to cultivate the thought of renunciation, and then his mind inclines to thoughts of renunciation. If he frequently thinks and ponders upon thoughts of non-ill will, he has abandoned the thoughts of ill will to cultivate the thoughts of non-ill will. If he frequently thinks and ponders upon thoughts of non-cruelty, he has abandoned the thought of cruelty to cultivate the thoughts of non-cruelty. And then his mind inclines to thoughts of non-cruelty. So to use an analogy from Rick Hanson, our attention is both a spotlight and a vacuum cleaner. It's like a spotlight because our attention illuminates what we rested on. And it's like a vacuum cleaner because whatever we rest our attention on gets drawn into our brains. Basically, whatever we are resting our attention on, activates particular circuits in our brain, and the more they're activated, the stronger they become. And so wherever we rest our attention, in a sense, or wherever we dwell with our attention and our experience, increasingly becomes what dwells in us and becomes who we are. And our brain is shaped by all our experiences, and our experiences begin with and involve what we're paying attention to. So unfortunately for us, due to the negativity bias of our brain, or in Buddhist terminology, due to the force of the defilements in our minds, we're very prone to paying attention to negative experiences. And the brain is naturally drawn to dwelling on experiences that were difficult or upsetting or worrying or stressful and so on. And so for this reason, it's really important to be able to regulate where we rest our attention. And meditation, the simple fact of bringing our mind back again and again to our meditation object, is a very good way to train this mental muscle that helps us regulate our attention. So our ability to regulate our attention is the essence of autonomy. So if we're going to have any personal autonomy and self-direction, we need to be able to control our attention. If we can't control our attention, basically we become a slave to whatever thought, emotion, or impulse arises in our mind, or we become a slave to whatever external distraction is around us, such as, our phone or advertisements that are designed to increase our craving and influence our actions. A quote from William James, who was a great psychologist at last century. The faculty of voluntarily bringing back a wandering attention over and over again is the very root of judgment, character, and will. An education which would improve this faculty would be the education par excellence. So he was talking about this in a time when meditation wasn't well known. And so an important aspect of Yoniso Manasikara is to direct our mind in such a way that we don't get unbalanced. So when we practice Yoniso Manasikara or wise attention properly, we don't get invaded by defilements. So from Majjhima Nikaya 2, Bhikkhus, I say that the destruction of the taints is for one who knows and sees, not for one who does not know and see. Who knows and sees what? Wise attention and unwise attention. When one attends unwisely, unarisen taints arise and arisen taints increase. When one attends wisely, unarisen taints do not arise and arisen taints are abandoned. So basically, we need to be very attentive to the impact that different experiences have on our minds. And we also need to notice how the way we are paying attention to things influences the internal atmosphere of our minds. So, for example, if you imagine seeing, smelling, or tasting an absolutely delectable chocolate cake, what happens in your mind? Like, do you start to salivate or feel hungry? Does craving for chocolate cake arise? Or if you think of someone with whom you have a great deal of difficulty and think of all the things that irritate you about them, how do you feel now? Does anger and aversion or perhaps anxiety arise? And now what happens if you think of someone who really cares about you, and if you imagine them with you now, then likely you'll feel relaxed and maybe feel a warm and tender feeling in your heart. And so this capacity to choose where we place our attention, both internally and externally, is one of the most valuable and powerful resources that we have. What we give attention to grows in the mind and begins to shape our inner experience. So part of Yoniso Manasikara is restraint of the senses, being aware of the impact of what we see, hear, smell, etc. has on our mind, and not feeding any unwholesome states that might rise in response to our experience. As well as guarding our minds in this way, sati sangwara, we can also deliberately cultivate wholesome states in our mind through the skillful use of attention. So if any of you are interested, Rick Hansen has a lot of great material about this. And one practice he really emphasizes is the practice of resting our attention in and staying with wholesome experiences that might arise during the day, and really hardwiring these into our brains and our nervous system. Of course, another whole level of this is, practicing things like metta or loving or compassion or whatever. But this is a kind of small practice that we can just do as we go about our days that can make a really big difference. And so unfortunately for us, generally because negative experiences have more survival value, we don't have to make any effort to remember them. They have like a super highway straight into our brain. So not only do we tend to dwell on difficult experiences, but it's also very easy for us to remember them and assimilate them. We don't have to make any effort at all. But on the other hand, like positive experiences are actually harder to assimilate. And they actually need to stay in our like short-term memory buffers for 30 seconds or longer to have a lasting impact on our brain. So this means that if we don't actually make a conscious effort to stay with and absorb positive experiences, they will leave no lasting trace on our minds and have little influence on our lives. And no matter how wonderful and nourishing and inspiring an experience is in the moment, unless we make an effort to really stay with it and integrate it, just for 30 seconds or more, it will simply wash through us, leaving little or no lasting change, which is, very sobering actually. And in the meantime, without making any effort at all, we are internalizing and becoming increasingly sensitive to negative experiences. So apart from guarding our minds and our senses to minimize the impact of negative experiences, we can also make the habit of drawing deeply into ourselves positive, wholesome experiences and steadily growing the qualities that they evoke in our brains and in our hearts. And a simple practice for this is whenever we have a positive or beneficial experience, just pause and to enjoy it. So we don't need to look for amazing moments for this practice. It can just be everyday moments of happiness, peace, and warm-heartedness, contentment, gratitude, or so on. Just these experiences that sometimes arise in our hearts as we go about a day. So perhaps, for example, we sit down with our cat that's purring on our knee at the end of the day, and we feel like a lot of warmth and caring and connection with this cat. And if we just stay with and marinate in that feeling of warm-heartedness for like 30 seconds or 5 breaths or more, then it will start to hardwire into our brain. The longer we stay soaking in that feeling of caring and connection, and the more full-bodied it is. So the more we kind of feel that feeling through our body, the more we hardwire that feeling into our nervous system and into our minds, and make it easier for us to access and re-experience in the future. Or, say we just sit down with a cup of tea after a busy morning at work and just feel a sense of relaxation and ease that spreads through our body, and a kind of peacefulness in our mind. Once again, if we really just stay with that sense of ease and peacefulness and relaxation, and just let our whole body steep in that feeling, we'll reinforce the tendencies towards relaxation and peace in ourselves. And, to some degree, we do this anyway, right? Like when we do have a really amazing experience, we kind of tell ourselves, this is a keeper, and we really stay with it and try and imprint it into our brains. So later on, we'll be able to remember it and bring it up. And so this is something we do innately, and making a habit of doing this regularly for the small good moments in our day is also important. So just doing this practice for as little as 6 times a day, 30 seconds at a time, can really start to shift our mind in positive directions and help ourselves to really start noticing and benefiting from the small little experiences that happen in our day. Okay, so I just have one more kind of framework to offer you, which is kind of a overview of the way attention, the different levels that attention can work at in our lives. I mean, there's so much about this topic, right? It would be wonderful to go deeply into the suttas and things. So this is just a very brief overview. But there's a modern philosopher called James William this time, and he developed this 3-tier model of attention, which provides a very useful framework for us when we consider how Yoniso Manasikara functions within the Eightfold Path. And so he kind of has the first way attention works, he uses the analogy of a spotlight. So a spotlight is our immediate focus of attention. So for example, say we decide we're going to sit down and practice meditation for an hour, or we decide to read a chapter in a book, or walk to the kitchen and make a coffee. So it's called spotlight because it involves narrowing down focus. And if our spotlight gets distracted or disrupted, then we're prevented from carrying out our near-term goals or activities. And then there's another form of attention, which he called starlight. So starlight is the focus we can apply to our longer-term goals. So to things you're working on over time. So it's not that you want to sit down and meditate for an hour or read a Dhamma book, but say you decide you want to dedicate your life to the realization of the Dhamma, or you want to develop certain wholesome qualities. And it's called starlight because when you feel lost in the desert, you look up to the stars and remember the direction you're going in. And if you get distracted from your starlight, then you lose a sense of your longer term goals and start to forget where you're headed. If we consider Yoniso Manasikara in relation to this starlight, then we can say bring in the aspects of reflecting on the requisites. So for example, we eat in order to live, not live in order to eat. Or, in monastic life, these reflections where we consider how much time and energy we spend on what we wear or our dwelling, and just, reflect on whether we're using those to support our life or whether we're kind of getting sidetracked and obsessing in those. And it's not appropriate to our overall life goals. Of course, lay people can also reflect in these ways. So starlight is a form of attention that reflects on the various aspects of our life and asks whether or not they're serving our bigger picture and our long-term goals. And then the third type of attention he mentions is daylight. So this is a form of attention that makes it possible to even know what our long-term goals are in the first place. So, how do you know that you want to practice the Eightfold Path? How do you know you want to dedicate your life to the Dhamma? Or how do you know you want to be a good friend? How do you know you want to develop more wisdom and compassion? So without, being able to really reflect and think deeply, it's not possible to figure these things out. And James William gave this type of attention the name daylight, because only when a scene is flooded in daylight, you can see the things around you clearly. And if you get so distracted that you lose your sense of daylight, in many ways you can't figure out who you are or what you want to do or where you want to go, and you just lose your own life. So another form of attention, which is also part of Yoniso Manasikara, is when we take time to digest what we've learned and to deepen our understanding of it. So we might reflect deeply about different aspects of the path or about right view, or we might ponder and clarify our understanding of the Four Noble Truths, for example. And then during this process of reflection, we create for ourselves a kind of internal map or internal blueprint. And then that map will guide us and be a kind of reference for us after that. So the action of reflecting and contemplating deeply is Yoniso Manasikara. And the resulting maps and value systems that we put into place through that process of reflection become an aspect of wisdom. And that wisdom becomes active in our experience through the faculty of sampajanya, which which together with sati monitors our actions in the world according to our understanding. And those understandings are put in place through the process of active reflection, which is Yoniso Manasikara. Also, when we go deeply into meditation, Yoniso Manasikara is no longer a cognitive or conceptual contemplation or reflection on different aspects of experience, but it's a deep, direct encounter with the reality of experience itself. So we'll be looking directly at and paying attention to experience through the lens of anatta, dukkha, and anicca, or non-self, suffering, and impermanence. And in deep meditation, we're not reflecting on these aspects conceptually, but we're experiencing them directly. So this is the depth of Yoniso Manasikara, when we see the phenomena of mind and body as a flux of impermanent phenomena, and we see the unsatisfactoriness of all things, that they're out of control, belonging to nature and not a self. So thank you. That's my reflection this evening.
Thank you so much, Venerable.
You're welcome.
Very talk on a very important topic, so thank you. We're now going to move into questions and answers. So if anyone has any questions, please put it into the chat. And for those who are here in person at the Metta Centre, you can put it onto the pieces of paper and I'll read them out to Venerable. So Venerable, to kickstart, we do have a question already from the audience. And I know you've just touched on anicca, anatta, dukkha, but perhaps expanding on this. The question is this: thanks for sharing Majjhima Nikaya number 2. It is one of my favourite suttas. The Buddha then talks about how we attend unwisely with the process of I-making or my-making, of how in the past, present or future, etc. Venerable, can you talk more to this and how we can attend wisely to counter the I-making or my-making? Thank you.
Probably not. I haven't immersed in this material for a while. That's quite a deep question. I mean, I guess I'd have to read the sutta and refresh myself. It's a while since I've read it, although it's one of my favorites too. But I'm getting old, my memory's not so good anymore. But I mean, I'm sure the person who asked the question knows, but just, obviously it's talking about, right, a lot of our sense of self belongs in the conception of the past and the future, and also being attached to different experiences. I don't know exactly what the sutta says anymore, but just, not identifying with experience and not going into the past or the future. Then we just notice things as they come up and pass, and then we're not making a self, I guess, right? How is the self created? Through this kind of virtual brain, virtual mind, being out of our immediate experience to some degree. Anyway, that's my best. Probably you need to ask a different teacher and they'll give you a very profound answer, but there you go. I tried. Maybe someone else has a better answer. Please, anyone else who can address that.
Thank you, Ayya. The next question is this. Thank you, Ayya. This is a very useful concept to understand and practice. Are you able to please talk to how intention and attention work together in meditation and also in our everyday life? Off the cushion. Thank you.
Some good questions here. Okay, so that's a very good question. I'd love to. So intention, right? Intention and attention. Well, first we have to define intention. And so if we think about intention as, say, emotional states that arise in response to experience. So, for example, it's a very good question. But so if some event happens in our life, right, and we feel like it's challenging, but we feel a feeling of confidence and resourcefulness in that we could do it, they would be kind of intentional states. And from that, our attention, like we would be noticing and paying attention to things that emotion predisposed us to, right? Whereas if we kind of felt overwhelmed and anxious, then our attention would be tending to look at the things in that experience that we felt threatened or overwhelmed by. And so the two would kind of work together. That would be my basic off the cuff sense of how it would work. And so, of course, attention to some degree, is unconscious, right? And so part of the practice of meditation is to make it more conscious. And it's the same with our intention is to some degree conditioned. So how we feel in response to an experience is just conditioning. But where we have the control is that we can notice this. We can't really help it if we feel anxious or we go into a freeze response with something. This just happens, right? But where we can but when we develop our mindfulness, we can notice this state arising and we can make a different choice. And also, like, if we use our attention well, then we are reprogramming our intention. So, for example, by staying with positive experiences, they're more likely to arise. Or if we're practicing things like, metta meditation, then we're using our attention to stay with these positive states and we're internalizing them more. And then they're more likely to arise. And then our attention, like if we, really stay with a heart of metta, then what we notice and what we pay attention to in other people is beautiful. And so I think it's a really good question because the two really work together in both conscious and unconscious ways. So that would be my answer. Very good questions, I have to say. You're making me think.
That's what we like at the Center. We like to have these robust discussions, and I thank you, Ayya, for answering these questions for us. Just on the topic about just the relationship between, for example, intention and attention, what is then the relationship, particularly the supportive relationship between mindfulness and attention? Because earlier you mentioned about how mindfulness is different to attention. Of course, we hear a lot about mindfulness and the benefits of that. So, yes, the supportive relationship of how they assist each other.
Right. Well, mindfulness, so I think often mindfulness and attention are conflated. And so there was a teacher in Sri Lanka, he's very well known in Sri Lanka, called Venerable Pemasuri. And he went on and on about this when I was there, saying, Manasikara is just attention and mindfulness is not Manasikara, right? Like mindfulness, like you can be paying a lot of attention to something, but not be at all mindful. Playing a video game, for example, right? There's a lot of examples. We can be really paying attention, but that's not mindfulness. Mindfulness is a lot more of and then once we start trying to define mindfulness, but if we look in early Buddhism, right, mindfulness is a kind of receptive state of mind where you're aware of, it's a kind of a metacognition, right? You're aware of your thoughts, you're aware of your feelings, you're aware of your mind, aware of your body. So that's that. And the two, of course, and whereas attention is just, directing your mind, but to be able to be mindful, You need to have control of your attention. So the two work together, but they are different faculties. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yes, great. Thank you, Ayya. The next, we have another really good question, and of course it comes from Sin. Hi, Ayya. It's really good to see you again here. It's probably been over a decade. Ayya, earlier you mentioned people's tendency to pay attention to sensory experience. For me, one of the challenges is to minimize my attachment to food and the smell that comes with it. I do notice that I often look forward to great and delicious food. I'm aware of this, and it's difficult to reduce it. Any tips? I wouldn't think attachment to food is a wholesome craving, right? And I would say probably, since this isn't just for you, but a lot of us may have similar.
Especially when you're meditating, right? Because it's the only actual enjoyment sometimes in the day if your meditation's not going well. I mean, I don't know. I mean, they say, right, that the way to replace lesser cravings is by giving your brain something more fun to look after. So, you know, if in your day your main fun thing is eating, then, I mean, we're like, what is it? The reward, I forget the technical word. So, you know, unless you're in I mean, one thing is to find deeper, more subtle happiness to replace that. But the other thing is, but enjoying food it's also, I mean, I don't know, it's a big topic, but if you're really with the eating experience and really enjoying it, right? And then when it's gone, it's maybe the issue is the attachment. And like, I know that for myself, like if I, you know, have a meal and I enjoy it, that's fine. But then sometimes, you know, you're remembering that what you ate later. And then you're like, okay, there was attachment there and there's craving. But what to do about it, I don't know. Maybe other people have got some ideas. Just to notice it and, yeah, I don't know. Is there anything wrong with enjoying food sometimes if we're not obsessed? It's all about compassion, right? I don't know, because the thing is, it's a gratification. What is it? The gratification, the danger and the escape. So there is gratification in the world, and it's fine to enjoy things in the world, right? It's about balance and about the overall direction of our life. And so if we see a beautiful flower or we enjoy something that's, you know, tasty, that's part of having a human body. But, you know, if we get our life out of balance around it, and these things take too much time and energy in our life, I think that's maybe where the problem is. And of course, it depends on the overall direction of one's life. Like if you're living a lay life, then you've got to have pleasure. Like that's what lay life is kind of to some degree about. I mean, it's got to be in balance, but, you know, pleasure is not bad, right? It's just that it's limited. It's just that you eat a meal and then it's finished. And if you crave too much, of course, you can get obsessed and then it's a problem. But the pleasure itself, I don't know. Anyway, they're my thoughts.
Thank you, Ayya. And of course, after I finish the meal, I don't think about the food anymore because I'm full. I'm no longer hungry.
Right. Fair enough. Yeah, I think it's fine to enjoy the life, you know. If you spend all your savings on fancy restaurants and don't have time and money for anything else, maybe it's a problem.
And just to add to this person says, I think to have thought once this food is delicious, myself, I can imagine, for example, on retreat, it may be that we would experience that thought that comes up, that craving for food, and that may become a hindrance.
Right. Yeah. I can't quite hear, Tina, your thing's gone again, but I got the gist.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you were just in and out. I could hear you, but you were in and out a bit, that's all.
Sorry about that. Moving on to the next question. So the next question is this. So Ayya, how do we tread the fine balance between shifting our attention and spiritual bypassing, i.e. ignoring our emotions in the name of spirituality?
That's an excellent question. Really, really excellent question. So it's like such a multifaceted question, and it's something I've been working with a lot myself, because it's easy even to be along a lot of years on the path and then realize, yeah, there's certain emotions I'm just not letting myself feel, right? And to really let yourself feel, and then really believe that actually it's okay to feel this. It can be quite tricky. For a start, okay, so we've got different layers of feelings that come up, right? So sometimes you're just ruminating on something and it's just making you miserable. It's not helping. And then you should just shift your attention, right? Or just emotions are coming up. It's just a bit of irritation. Then there's no need to go there. Just shift your attention. But sometimes these bigger issues that come up in relation to situations or people in our life, and then we need to feel them and be with them, and then maybe move our attention after. But I think, yeah, sometimes if we shouldn't avoid our feelings. So sometimes you just have to really sit with and be able to just experience and be with whatever you're experiencing, and to just trust it, to let it pass through. And it's all about balance, right? So you need to do that. And if there's big issues, though, in your life, like maybe anxiety or whatever, then you've also got to like develop the counters to that. And also maybe do the things in your outside world that are causing the problem. So these are all such big things, right? Like we don't normally experience an emotion in isolation. Like it could be coming up from a trauma in the past, and then maybe we need specific help with it. Or it could be an emotion that we never allow ourselves to feel. So for myself, like the last year or two, I've had to allow myself to feel anger, right? Not express it, but learn to tolerate it, learn to feel it. And really, if I get anxious, like let myself feel that. And do the things that anger asks you to do, like setting boundaries, saying no, being clear, being assertive, right? And not just pushing it away and trying to be nice, for example. So for me, that's been a big learning. And so to learn to, be with our experiences and to tolerate them. But that doesn't mean, but not acting on them, but to learn to really be with whatever we're feeling, it's true. And also developing strengths, which might be communication skills, or it might be, learning to be more calm, or learning to be more resourced inside. So it's very complicated, but I think that's a good question. Of course, we don't want to just use our practice like we're feeling angry, so we move to metta. Sometimes that's appropriate, but sometimes it's not. And I think the person who asked the question is obviously, got a sense, like sometimes it's just not appropriate doing that. And there's something that needs to be gone into and really experienced and really integrated. And really that part of experience needs to be being with. Sokni Rinpoche has this lovely idea of, he calls it your beautiful monsters. And you kind of shake the hand of your beautiful monsters. So you're just with them, you allow them to be there. And he also has this idea that you let your monsters beat you. So we've got these experiences, they come up into our minds, we just push them down, right? We don't want to hear it, we don't want to feel it. We don't want that to be part of our experience. We push it down, and then we create a lot of divisions in ourselves. And until we can be with all these aspects of ourselves, how can we be with others, right? And so really allowing ourselves to be with all these different aspects of experience, to tolerate them, to let them come through us, to let them beat us because I've been suppressed for so long. We need to do that. So that's a really big part of the practice. And so with this Yoniso Manasikara, with Rick's practice, for example, I think that he would be the first to say that it's really because we're naturally often moving our attention to what is negative, and we don't pay enough attention to what's positive. It's noticing the 90s tiles that are beautiful and not just focusing on the 10% that aren't. So that's what that practice is about. It's seeing both sides of reality, not just focusing on the bad. But it's definitely not about repressing or pushing away the bad either. So, I mean, it's a huge question, right? This is the part of what we're trying to do with our practice. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Ayya. And there's so many responses here. So, wow, that's a fantastic response, Ayya, to honour your feelings and be aware of them with kindness. It's hugely important for emotional maturity, I think. Someone else has said, I find in myself the telltale signs of spiritual bypass is ill will, suppression, pushing away, wanting to obliterate, the defilement. There is very little acceptance, kindness, softness, or understanding. And another, thank you so much, Ayya. That's a great response. And I certainly echo all of those. So
I mean, I think the thing is that we don't like ourselves, right, when we have these emotions. So it's very challenging. Like when we feel angry, we judge ourselves, right? Or when we feel anxious, we judge ourselves. Like when we're out of regulation, it's actually very hard because we have this inner critic. So it's really challenging. So I don't have any tidy answers. I think it's a very messy process, but everyone sounds like they're kind of grappling with it in their own way.
But very real too. So thank you.
Definitely.
We've spoken about wise attention.
Yeah.
So what are unwise attention and how to deal with that?
Well, unwise attention is there's a lot of it. So part of it is paying attention to things in a way that does increase our defilements, right? Or ruminating. So again, a quote from Dzogchen Rinpoche, which is, think the same thought again and again, but 10 times is enough. So, there's a certain point we need to think things through, right? There's a problem in our life, we have to think about it. There's a difficult person, we have to think about skillful means. But there's a certain point, and I think we all probably know it, that you're just spinning your wheels. And, you just have to pull your mind away from that negative space. It's not productive anymore. And, I don't know, have a nice apple or wash your hands or do some deep breaths and just shift your attention. So that's one thing. And the other unwise attention, of course, is just being really fragmented, checking our phone all the time, letting our attention being pulled around the place. That would be a part of it. And I was quite interested actually about those aspects of attention that are talking about really contemplating and reflecting on our life. And part of that was actually from an interview with Ezra Klein, and they were talking about how our modern life gives us so little time to contemplate, even about the deeper meaning and our deeper direction in life. And so sometimes unwise attention would maybe be keeping too busy and not giving ourselves the time to really think about what are we doing with this one precious life, I don't know, things like that. And they also say fixating on, what is it? I can't remember, when you fixate on the signs and features of something. So these parts of something that irritate you and just like fixating on that. So like someone who annoys you, right? Thinking about all the things that annoy you about them. That's unwise attention. It's just increasing aversion. So things like that. Yeah. Anyway, I'm sure everyone else has a long list they could add.
Thank you. Another question, not related to the topic, but very interesting as well. Ayya, can you share a bit more about the Bhikkhunis Sangha in New Zealand? I hope all is well in New Zealand.
Well, the Bhikkhunis Sangha in New Zealand at the moment is myself. And, well, the Theravadas, I don't actually know. I haven't connected with the Mahayana Bhikkhunis. I should sometime. And then there's one Theravada Bhikkhuni, and she was Korean. She's trained in Unwise in Korea. But about, a decade or more ago, she converted to Theravada. She went to Burma and did deep practice there. She's got excellent meditation. And she's got a center meditation center that she runs together with a bhikkhu who's also got really great practice up in Kirikiri. But our place is really the only bhikkhuni place, which is why I was maybe stupid enough to start a place. No, it's a lovely job, but you get busy. And because there's nowhere for women to train here, and I'm a Kiwi bhikkhuni, so I thought to do it. So really it's me at the moment, but hopefully in a few years we'll have a whole group of us. We'll see. Maybe some of you will come across and join. If the Australian monasteries are full now you can hop across the ditch.
The Aussies and the Kiwi bhikkhunis.
Yeah. I hopped across to Aussie because he was nowhere here when I was young. So now you can hop across here.
Sounds wonderful. Thank you for the invitation. And thank you so for putting the information in the chat. And for those who are watching this online as well, we will put it into our description below as well.
Yeah, I'll email you all the quote, what do you call it? References.
Thank you. That will be wonderful. That will be down below in the links below as well. And we've also got another message from someone adding to the conversation. Maybe can second some Santi nuns over.
Yeah, they're all busy. I'd like that. I'd love that. But Santi's a big place, and I think they need all hands on deck, and the same as Dhammasara, but hopefully in time they'll start overflowing. But there's quite a few aspirants, actually. There's quite a few young women that would like to practice, so we might have our own supply here. We've only been going for a year, so we're still early days, but things are starting to go ahead. So yeah, it's kind of exciting.
Amazing. Sadhu, rejoice with you. It's so needed right now. Thank you.
Yeah.
And we've got a note. On that note, I just wanted to let you know, Ayya Severa said you're welcome to visit here if and when you do visit Sydney again in the future.
Well, mutual. She's also welcome over here. So yeah, mutual. Yeah.
And I will be giving a talk at our session very soon on a Wednesday, so we'll pass that message to her as well.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay. Now we've come to the end of our questions. So now we want to move into some discussions. We usually pose a question to the audience for people to reflect on their own practices, and then you will write your answers into the chat, or for those who are here in person, onto pieces of paper, and then we will ask Ayya. So the question that we're asking everyone to reflect on today is, what are some of your challenges in practicing wise, appropriate attention? And we've got some answers coming through already. So are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Far away. Okay. The first one is addiction to thinking. Indeed.
So what do you want? Do you want me to reply or?
Yeah. So what are some ways we can deal with addiction to thinking?
Well, you have to look at the cause, right? And I know that one of the causes, we don't really cover this in Theravada, but again, Sokmi Rinpoche talks about it a bit, and then the Qigong, it all depends on the causes. But sometimes it's just that our energy's out of balance, right? All the energy's in the head, we're not grounded. And that pushes a lot of thinking. Could be that, could be craving. But sometimes our emotional energies just aren't balanced, and that causes a lot of defilement. So that's one thought anyway.
And speaking of which, we've got another one, which is cravings, just as you mentioned just now. So how do we deal with craving as an impediment to wise attention?
Okay, well, I think just cultivating the opposite. So craving comes from, again, a sense of being out of balance, kind of deficit disturbance, right? And if we cultivate feelings of peacefulness, feelings of contentment, feelings of love, if we feel full inside and we're like at home in ourselves, then the craving reduces. So it's partly spending more time in the counter states and noticing what's causing the craving, like is there some need that's not being met? So that would be one way, I would think, because craving's really what what causes all thinking, right? And what causes all defilements in one way or another. Yeah. Don't know if that was helpful, but
yeah, for sure. The next person says one of the challenges is the ego. The ego seems to want to control attention in a way that's no longer wise.
right.
What can we do?
Well, I guess again, just coming back to oneself and to peacefulness, right? Ego, I mean, there's so many parts of us, right? So we've got this controller and this part that wants to manage everything, right? And it's coming from maybe anxiety or some program. And so, but it's not the maybe wiser part of ourselves. And so, how can we help it to relax a little bit? So that meditation I did in the beginning, for example, coming into the body and maybe noticing any tensions in the mind and the body. And also, why is it wanting to control and take over? Like, what are its concerns? And can it let the wiser part of you, maybe the more grounded part of you, do it? So it's kind of subtle, and also just letting it know, you're here, right? It's not by itself having to do all of this, but there's another part of you that could take care as well. And also just accepting it. Yeah, it's quite subtle. So they're just some thoughts that come up.
Thank you, Ayya. The next challenge is this: habit patterns of the mind, strong habitual tendencies that go below the awareness radar.
Right, such as
habit patterns of the mind.
Habit patterns that are below awareness. So if they're below awareness, you can't do much about them, apart from just developing more awareness and understanding. Is it like, I need more clarity? Like sometimes we notice after the fact, right? I don't know if it's talking about things like that or...
Okay, so maybe we'll come back to this, and if the person wants to elaborate a bit more, we can come back to it. Question: how does one address the underlying tendency to ignorance? The fact that you don't know implicitly implies it is a blind spot. How do you know that you don't know?
Well, you don't. I mean, that's one reason why we need to be open to feedback, right? And why we need to, learn Dhamma and keep learning. Because if it's a blind spot, it's a blind spot. But other people normally know our blind spots. So we kind of need good friends and to rely on them a little bit and maybe ask them to point things out. Maybe, and also just keep developing. Like the more we develop, the more the more ignorance burns itself out. So maybe just developing the counter to ignorance, which is wisdom, and whatever way we can, then the light will get rid of the darkness.
Yeah, thank you. And the comment to respond to that is, it's true, the development of right view is Yoniso Manasikara and words of another. Very good. Okay, so earlier we asked that question about habitual thought patterns, and we've got some clarification. Yes, habitual thought patterns that you are either aware of after the fact or are so strong you don't feel inclined to maintain awareness.
Well, at least you're aware of them after the fact. And then, I don't know, write them down or... I mean, it's kind of tricky, right? Sometimes even we're aware at the time. Yeah, but like they say, I don't know. I remember I was at a retreat once and this guy sort of said, we had pizza that day and you're only meant to have one piece, right? But of course, it's very nice pizza and he wanted two and he could see the craving and he knew he was going to, but his mindfulness and restraint wasn't enough to stop him to have two. But he could see the whole process. So it's this kind of dynamic, right? Sometimes like we know what we should do, but we don't do it. And like our defilements are stronger than us. And it just, I don't know, you just have to keep working and I don't know. I don't have a good answer. Sorry. Just keep working with it. At least you're aware of it, right? At least you're aware of this kind of these things that are coming up. And sometimes we're just in this middle place, like we're aware of the issue, but we don't have a solution yet, or we don't quite have the will yet, but we're uncomfortable about it. You're asking the question because there's a feeling of discomfort about it. Then you've got your own wisdom. And over time, I think your problem solving and wise part of the mind will figure it out. It just might take a while. My feeling. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Ayya. Another question or questions. Is dependent origination required to see the intricate patterns of the mind, or can one be mindful and use that awareness to see things that usually escape?
Yeah. I mean, sure.
Great answer.
What is dependent?
Someone's asked, what is dependent origination? We've got 15 minutes left, Ayya.
Yeah, it's just what it says it is. I mean, the main one is like, is that link between feeling and craving, right? So I'm not able to give, even if I wanted to, I'd have to go and read a few books for like a month, like I did for this talk, and then I'll be able to give you a talk. I'm not a Dhamma encyclopedia, unfortunately, but teaching helps. You learn a lot fast. But I mean, the main thing with dependent origination is, right, noticing craving arising in response to contact. So that's the main thing to be aware of, which is kind of what we've been talking about. So, you see something beautiful and you feel like you want it. So again, there's a difference between feeling something beautiful, say, and say you see something beautiful or you taste a nice taste. Okay, so we'll think about eating ice cream. Okay, so you've got your ice cream, right? And you have a mouthful of it. And there's a pleasant sensation and experience, and then it goes, right? So that's just pleasant sensation and pleasant experience. And then craving is that part that wants to eat the next mouthful before you've and you're not even tasting what's in your mouth, but it's driving you on and on and on and pushing you. It's that kind of pushing quality, as opposed to just being with experience and kind of being contented. Or aversion, you're with, say, something unpleasant happens, and there is a way that you can just be with it, just accept it, right? It's unpleasant, you don't like it, but you can just be okay with it. And then the craving is when you're pushing it away and you're getting aversion towards it. And even if you get aversion, you can kind of accept that, right? And not get that other part of you that tells you shouldn't be aversive. It all gets complicated. So I mean, the main thing with dependent origination is to notice that, like the impact, like if we have experience, then noticing our, when we can just be with it and be equanimous, like be contented, be kind of balanced with our experience. And then when we're getting out of balance and like grasping it or pushing it away or not accepting it or not able to be with it, that would be my attempt at an answer. There you go.
Thank you. Succinct answer. Excellent. I'm just going to go back to a question that was asked earlier, and it was when you mentioned about Qigong. Qigong, that's interesting.
Right.
Do you incorporate Qigong on Tai Chi or yoga or other body type practices in your practice?
I do, yeah. Yeah, I especially, I have a bit of health issue and energy problem. That would be one of my main hindrances for my practice over the years. And so I think those practices are really good for developing enough internal energy that when you sit, you have a lot more energy with your mind. And also for myself, I mean, like a lot of you, I tend to be very speedy, right? I'm very cognitive. And so learning to come into my body and to balance my energy and to, not have that, like, they call it prana disorder. We don't really talk about that in Theravada, but they talk about it more like in, say, Tibetan Buddhism or whatever. Then just being more balanced, I think, helps more wholesome mind state. So, yeah, I think I mean, it's up to everyone. They have to find their own way, but sometimes I think knowing a little bit about this is helpful. So it's not necessary, but for those of you that it's helpful, I think it's always good to try lots of skillful means. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would love to hear more about it. We've still got some time and there's no other questions, but just on that topic, and also particularly with the hindrances, is that also when the energies are out of balance?
I think it can be. So I'll just, excuse me, there's this new book, if any of you are interested, by Sogni Rinpoche called Why We Meditate, and he wrote it together with Dan Goleman. And he's been teaching in the West for like 25 years. You know, those Tibetans, they start training when they're 10, go through boot camp. By the time they're 22, they've got this amazing knowledge of Buddhism, and then they go and teach thousands of people. And so they get a really good kind of overview, I think, of, you know, thousands of people and what the tendencies are. And then they also dialogue with like psychologists and all of that. And he said, you know, what he really notices was modern people is we're just out of balance. And so he gives the analogy of anyway, I'll just talk for a few minutes. So he gives the analogy of you've got the mind can go very fast, right? The body can go really fast. And then you've got the emotional body. And if the emotional body's not balanced, it starts pushing the mind. So the mind speeds up and gets out of control. And the emotions are all over the place because we're always speedy. And so we lose touch with what he calls our basic okayness. So when you're a child, right, there's often, like with children who are well looked after and well loved and well fed, they've got this natural happiness and this natural exuberance. And at times when we come into balance ourselves, we naturally feel loving. We are just happy for no reason. We're okay for no reason. And so, but it's quite a subtle feeling. And so there can't be too much thinking. We've got to come from the mind into the body. So he really emphasizes dropping attention from the mind into the body, and also doing abdominal breathing to really bring the energies down and to be more subtle. And then we can be in touch with our subtle energies and also have this just feeling of being happy for no reason. And that's almost like the base for practice, because he said he taught a lot of Westerners and modern people like emptiness and all of that, and they got it very quickly, but after 10 years their meditation hadn't progressed. And so he felt like the base of meditation, before you can start practice, you have to establish a calmness in yourself, essence love, and then from that let the clarity arise. But you have to have this kind of foundation. And so he said, yeah, Qigong and all of that are good, but also just simply bringing the mind into the body. And so those of you that have trouble with overthinking, that's always a really good hack. There's actually a kind of seesaw, like the more you're aware of physical sensation, the less you can think. And if you're aware of the whole body at once, that basically your thinking mind is here, and the lateral networks are the parts that are aware of, say, your whole body at once or space. So being aware of, say, your whole body at once in space, that will automatically calm your mind. And also simply doing things like breathing into the abdomen, it will settle things down. And then when the energies are balanced, you have a natural feeling of balance and happiness. And then the practice develops. So yeah, because I tend to be as speedy as all of you, and I'm a monastic, I'm not supposed to be. So I've got this local monk, he's lovely, he's Sri Lankan, and he ordained when he was like 8, and he's always just in this really, you're around him and you just feel so peaceful and so grounded and become so mindful. And when I'm with him, like my whole energy pattern shifts. I'm like, how do you do that? And this whole practice of just bringing the energy down, I start to feel, oh, that's how he does it. I haven't integrated it yet, but anyway. So for any of your interest, that's the general summary.
Very interested, thank you. And I previously we did have some sisters who used to come to Metta Centre, and they would teach Qigong and meditation as a practice, one after another. So yeah, very interesting. And we've got some comments also from people online. Someone has said, I do Pilates to support my Chitta Nupassana practice. Someone else has put a comment, the way I see why physical activity is also important is that, say we are only given one car to drive for the rest of our life, can't buy a new one, or even with money, we should do the best to look after the car, do the proper servicing, give it the right fuel, etc. Same with the body. Makes sense to look after it. I have heard stories that even forest meditation masters can do splits, touch toes, etc., but it's just not a public thing they teach. So I think it's one.
If you don't look after your body, you can't practice. You know, if you're exhausted and you're sick, try and get samadhi. Good luck. Yeah. I mean, some people can, but it's a lot harder. So, yeah.
So I just want to say thank you so much for your patience and sharing your wisdom in answering all of our questions, maybe some curly questions as well. And it was such a great session. So thank you. And thank you for making this so real and sincere and genuine. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks. I enjoyed it. Thanks for inviting me. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. So I'm now going to pass over to Soph, the MC.
Okay.
Thanks, Tina, for facilitating the conversation. And thank you, Ayya, for a wonderful conversation, a wonderful talk. Echo everything that Tina said. I love how our conversation ranged from attention and eventually to, you know, physically looking after our body and calming our body, which is such an important part, as you said, of our practice that often sometimes gets overlooked. Before we finish, would you like doing a prayer or a quick dedication of merits, however style you would prefer to do it in?
Sure. Well, I guess I just want to say that, you know, all of us are connected in ways that we don't always understand. And so just to, you know, any good qualities or insights that we have gained together in our practice tonight, then, you know, in some small way or large way or ripple way, you know, may they benefit other people who are in our lives, and also ultimately, because we're all connected, may anything good that's come out of tonight, any insights, any positive qualities that we might have developed, may they be for the benefit of all beings.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you. Thanks, Ayya. Thanks, everyone. Before we go, we have a very quick announcement. So this Saturday, we have a very special event, a Mind Lab workshop, where we'll have international speakers coming to speak to us about and giving us discussion, guided meditation to explore a unique practical approach to bring Buddhism into our lives. So these international speakers cannot really attend Wednesday talks because of the time differences. So this is a really unique opportunity for you to be part of, you know, like discussions and bring the practice home, literally and figuratively. And next Wednesday we have Ajahn Achalo coming back. You may remember him from the last session about the importance of daily meditation. And yeah, I thought it was a really great session. I think all of us who joined the call thought they were really wonderful. He did 2 sessions, and yeah, I'm personally so excited for him to hear from him again, and so hope you can join us next Wednesday as well. And just a quick reminder, our talks are online and in person. If you'd like to join in person at Bankstown, the address is there and on Google Maps. You can also subscribe to our mailing list or join our WhatsApp group. The link's in the chat as well, at the very top of the chat. And we also invite you to like our Facebook and Instagram and make a donation if you will, because we run completely on donation basis. That's how the talks are free. As mentioned, if you like to support the Bhikkhuni Sangha in New Zealand, where Ayya resides. The link is also in the chat. And yeah, that is all from us. Thank you everyone for attending. Hope to see you next week and this Saturday. Have a lovely, lovely evening.